Hey everyone, this is Dayu from EcommOps. I am sharing this document here. We are going to share it after the fact. I just want to be clear that this is not going to be a live updated document. This is going to be updated as of April 17, 2025, probably around until 2:30 p.m. or so. So we are going to make some updates to this depending on the conversation that we go through here. However, this is not going to be a live document. The news and implications have been moving way too fast for me to be able to even try to update this. And trust me, I've been updating these documents throughout the days, and every other day it's outdated again. So in terms of Q&A, so this is meant to be a live Q&A. This is an extremely long document. So thank you so much for the EcommOps team for helping me prepare this. This has been getting longer and longer, and I don't think anyone wants me to talk about this document for the full 90 minutes. So as I go through, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat as well. Please use the chat in like to ask any questions, especially if it's relevant to a specific session that we are talking about. I will be answering questions as we go, as long as it's relevant in each section. So please, if you have relevant questions on each section, please do not wait for the end so I can address it in the most relevant way. Okay. All right. So just give me 1 second. Let me just make sure that I have my chat up and expanded. Oh, and by the way, just looking at the attendee list, we do have quite a few of EcommOps clients. We have some partners to EcommOps as well, including Greg, who runs Canary Solutions, who's our recommended sourcing solution for EcommOps clients. Greg, by the way, if you have any insights more on the sourcing, manufacturing side, or freight side, please feel free to add in chat as well. We do have quite a few of our team members. We have Simon, we have Josiah, we have Camilla. Sorry, there's a lot of folks in here, but I'm not going to go through everyone, but we also have quite a few EcommOps team members as well. So as it makes sense, please feel free to answer any questions in the chat as well. All right, so let's get started. So for those who don't know me, I'm just going to spend a few minutes and talk about me and EcommOps and why you should actually listen to me. So my name is Dayu. I founded and I'm CEO of EcommOps, which is a DTC China fulfillment, basically 3PL, directly fulfilling from China. I have a lot of experience, so I actually ran 3 D2C brands before. I was featured on Shark Tank before. I have a video here if you want to check it out. I actually ran my dropshipping store back in the day. It was not my proudest moment. That was like 7 years ago. I was selling honestly kind of crap products, and everyone was using AliExpress. Not my proudest moment, but that was when I was inspired by the efficacy and efficiency of direct from China fulfillment, and that's why I started EcommOps. And currently, I actually partner with a Thai influencer starting a DTC beauty brand called Pasnita Skincare, so you can check that out as well. And previously, I have an economics degree from Stanford. I have an MBA from Wharton. I used to be a product manager in technology. I consulted for a bunch of retail companies before at the Boston Consulting Group, and I started EcommOps. So the point is, like, I know what I'm talking about, okay? So it's not just going to be about logistics. Now, the focus of this webinar is really going to be the impacts of the tariffs on D2C fulfillment from China and the impacts on the e-commerce space. However, I am going to talk about some economic business concepts as well, because I do have experience there as well. And then now, EcommOps, what do we do exactly? So not only are we a China 3PL, we ship tens of thousands of orders per day from China to customers around the world. More than 60% go to the U.S. and the rest go to global markets outside of China. So actually, we don't really actually have any within China shipping. Our clients are real brands, real D2C brands. Our largest market is actually the U.S. in terms of client base. So roughly almost 30% of our client base is from the U.S. Now, Europe is the largest segment, but obviously that's many countries. But the U.S. actually makes up for most of our client base. And the majority of our clients, and you guys are in here right now, you are actually selling quality products to customers around the world, including Americans. And one of the things that I want to start this off with is the tariffs are hurting you guys, okay? The tariffs are hurting American businesses or Western businesses, and it's hurting American consumers. Yes, there are Chinese sellers selling cheap products. There are, especially if you're talking about stuff like in the Amazon FBA space, for example, or generic products, and honestly, or Temu or Shein, and they're using gray or black hat tactics. And there are honestly Western dropshippers doing the same as well. But this is not what we stand for. And this is not what the majority of EcommOps clients stand for. And honestly, this is not what a lot of D2C ecom brands stand for. Shipping from China is just a logistics method, okay? Traditional dropshipping has its issues. But poor quality products, no control of your supply chain, no control of your factories. China fulfillment doesn't mean dropshipping, and there's quite a bit of confusion around that sometimes as well. We have many, many brands who work directly with factories, some of the best factories in the world, who produce great products, and they utilize China direct fulfillment as an efficient way to get these good products to their customers, whether it's the US or to Europe or around the world. So I want to be very, very clear on that what this entire webinar, and there will be a next one next week as well, is really more focused on D2C e-commerce brands, Western businesses who just happen to be able to leverage China direct fulfillment in order to get their quality products to customers around the world. And here's an example of our client locations, where they're from. 0 Chinese businesses, literally. For those who don't know, by the way, I was born in China, but I'm actually an American citizen, and half of our business is actually based in the US. And actually, especially our client team, most of our client team is actually based out of China, and even those within China, they have a strong Western influence as well. So look, I've always said that I'm very proud of being Chinese, and I still am being proud of Chinese. However, that doesn't mean that I don't believe that there are definitely some kind of gray area shady things that some Chinese factories and Chinese suppliers actually engage in. But that's the case everywhere. There's great factories as well. And in many categories, the best factories are actually based in China right now. So there's going to be a high variance in the quality of goods, the quality of supply chain logistics everywhere in the world, even in China. Okay, but you don't actually have to utilize all of those tactics. And what we believe in and what our clients believe in is, how do you leverage China logistics in the right way to add that additional flexibility and agility into your business in a way that is compliant, and certainly avoiding any black hat or gray hat loopholes. Okay, but this is where the tariffs and the looming de minimis elimination on May 2nd really poses a major problem for us. And it doesn't mean that this is going to end our industry. However, we need to be aware of what is actually happening right now. And then we'll go into details about how do you actually operate in the right way, how do you adjust in the right way that not only leverages what we're doing right now, but in a way that's actually compliant and doesn't introduce excess risk, just unreasonable risk to your business. Okay? All right, so that's the quick intro. Oh, and then, here's just a description of our team members. Again, we have leadership, we have client teams around the world. So, a big part of what we do is figuring out, helping Western brands, Western businesses be able to access this, what I still believe to be a very efficient form of fulfillment, direct fulfillment from China. Okay, so first, starting with the most recent high-level situation. This is as of April 17th. I 100% expect that this is going to change again tomorrow or whenever someone else watches this. So this is as of April 17th. Okay, so let's look at the White House fact sheet first. So by the way, previously, not many people actually would go to the whitehouse.gov page and look at these these fact sheets. But recently, it has certainly been a thing. So the most recent fact sheet came out, and there was actually a big shock in the industry a couple of days ago, where this all of a sudden, I think it was here. Actually, let me look at my Twitter account. Okay, so my Twitter account is actually where I'm going to be posting the most up-to-date information. And we can look at the timeline here. So April 16th. So this was, I can't believe it. It's like 2 days ago. This was midnight Okay, midnight of April 16th. I was just about to hit the sack, and then this started blowing up. Everyone was saying, okay, shoot, all of a sudden, at somehow midnight, the White House announced a 245% tariff on imports. What? So like, and that started going wild in social media and media everywhere. But there was no formal statement. Okay, this was just a fact sheet that was published at around midnight, the evening of April 15th. And then the very next day, and by the way, I can't believe this actually happened. The White House literally ninja edited its own fact sheet. Okay, so like this was something like when did I post this? It was yeah, like this came at like 9:30 a.m. April 16th. Okay, with no announcement, but they literally just ninja edited a sub bullet here that, oh, by the way, we don't mean a 245% tariff. This includes the 125% reciprocal tariff, 20% fentanyl tariff, Section 301 tariffs. And by the way, like this is not even the full clarification, because this doesn't even include the general duties that some products have on top of this. So now, this is helpful though, because over the last week or so, everyone's been trying to figure out, what does 125% mean? What does 145% mean? Does it include the fentanyl tariffs? Does it include Section 321? And I guess this clarifies it. But hilariously, not even enough, because what this should say is that plus any existing general duties, depending on your HTS code. So we'll get to that detail shortly. Yeah, and then, well, so this is the fact sheet. There's a clarification on the original executive order, and there's the executive order previously as well. So when in doubt, do go back to the White House, okay? Because this is going to be the probably most trustworthy source of truth for at least what the White House is actually formally thinking, okay? So now, so this executive order is very important, and this has been just updated through the days as well. The tariff aside, okay? So the tariff are, I mean, just to clarify there, it's not 245% technically. It is at least 125% plus 20%. Okay, so that 145% is basically this from before. And then the Section 301 duties ranging from, actually it could range from 0 to 100%, right? And there's general duties on top of that. So there was no increase. Okay, this was just a clarification. And then now this part is where it really, so the part about the de minimis is what really matters for direct from China shipping. And, actually, this was actually just a fact sheet. Sorry, there's so many of these, there's honestly so many of these executive orders now that, well, anyways, look at the executive orders. But basically what really is the biggest implication for direct from China parcel shipping is the de minimis elimination. By the way, the de minimis is kind of a colloquial term. The formal section is called Section 321, but everyone's calling it de minimis now. So previously, and actually it might be helpful to look at a timeline of how we got here. So way back in the day, like almost 100 years ago, there was the idea of the de minimis rule. Okay, and the concept of it, which still applies by the way, is efficient processing of low value imports. At the time, it was $1 and then $5 and $200 and then $800. Okay, so now the public reaction to all this is, okay, this is the reason why like dropshipping blew up, Temu blew up, etc. And that is part of the truth, right? I mean, that's part of the outcome, because what this literally means is that you can send a parcel, declare it under $800, and especially like last year, it didn't have any scrutiny at all. It would just go through customs completely scot-free. Okay, so obviously that really enabled very efficient cross-border trade, and it started way back in the day with AliExpress using stuff like China Post or ePacket, and throughout the years evolved into more and more private couriers like UniExpress, 4PX, which many of our clients actually use here, to even offer more efficient solutions compared to China Post or ePacket. But regardless, up to this point and until May 2nd, everything fell under the de minimis exemption if you declare under $800. Now, there's a small misconception that this was a Trump thing or Trump only thing. Actually, even during Biden's administration, September of 2024, there was already indications that there was going to be additional scrutiny on this, on Section 321. Okay. Now, at the time, though, it was mainly around cracking down on illegal or unsafe shipments. So, like fentanyl. I mean, there's fentanyl here. I mean, literally, fentanyl is what they're talking about. Okay. So this was actually before Trump. And at the time, there was actually a fair case for this because not only were cross-border sellers, able to send their packages with no duties, actually there were illegitimate or bad actors sending stuff like drugs or just misclassifying stuff. And quite frankly, this was happening within e-commerce as well, right? For example, stuff like supplements or like food products are very restricted. You're not really supposed to send it in these channels, but then like you would just declare it as something else, declare it under $800, and then it just bypasses any scrutiny. Okay, so even from September of 2024, this was before Trump, there was already the announcement that there was going to be additional scrutiny on this de minimis exemption. And actually, that was when we noticed at EcommOps. So we already kind of started working with our clients to make sure that our clients know about this and that they're preparing the HDS codes, understanding how their products are actually classified, what they're declaring it as, and we were making sure that we were working with couriers that actually would clear customs in a legitimate way, that actually declares the right classifications for the products in order to clear customs. Now, at that time, it wasn't as much of a tariff issue, okay? It wasn't as much of a duty issue. And then Trump got reelected. So I'm not going to go through this entire timeline, by the way. We are going to share this document after the fact. So you can go through all this, and it's probably just going to keep on growing and growing and growing. But then, you guys remember at a time where it was only 10% tariffs? Wow. You remember those days, huh? Those are fun. So it was 10% tariffs, but at the time, there was actually, and actually, I think we forgot to add it in the timeline exactly. So my team, please add it here as well. But around this time is actually when there was supposedly elimination for de minimis as well. So this was right around like February 3rd or 4th or so. So not only were there going to be tariffs, but then around this time, there was supposed to be elimination of de minimis from China around this time. At the time, though, actually, it was like for Mexico and Canada as well, which was odd. But I'm not going to talk about politics here. I'm going to talk about just mainly China. And that really shocked the entire DTC shipping industry from China because this was right after Chinese New Year's ended. Actually, it was actually even before Chinese New Year's ended it. There were, I'm not going to go through the whole history of this, but there were different forms of emergency shipping lines that would kind of clear customs with a fee, utilizing what's called the Type 11 entry for customs clearing, for example. That was a big fiasco for a couple of days until Trump quietly paused de minimis. At the time, it was indefinitely, but it was until when customs was ready to actually enact the elimination again. And then there was I'm not going to go through all of this, but there was this idea of a reciprocal tariffs. Okay, so that was when the entire world was actually expecting. So this was not just China, but in certain other countries that have high tariffs against the U.S., the world was expecting that the U.S. was going to enact very high but logical reciprocal tariffs around countries around the world. And by the way, even at that time, economists were warning against this idea. By the way, I have an economic background. Terrible idea. Tariffs are a terrible idea. And I'll talk about that later. And then the trade war kind of started. Um, more imports. More tariffs. China started adding tariffs as well. And then there was the Liberation Day. You guys remember Liberation Day? Do you guys remember this board? And I'll talk about that more later. So then there were these like way too high, like just absurd reciprocal tariffs based on a incorrect calculation, which we'll talk about next. And then the tariffs were suspended except for China. China did not come to the table. China has then raised tariffs to like multiple times, 34%, and then and now it's up to where is it? So 104%. Okay. And then 145%, and then through these days there were a couple of confusing moments where like no one exactly knew like what 145% meant, what 125% meant, but I guess now it's a little bit more clear. Okay. And China continues to remain firm. Now it has been messaged multiple times from Trump at the White House that they do actually really want China to come to the table and agree on a deal. Personally, like I don't want to go into politics that much, but like just my understanding of how the Chinese government works, the CCP works, Xi Jinping works, is that I don't think that's going to happen. Especially seeing all the situations where either different countries or companies have negotiated with Trump, but it never ended out well. Like it would always get worse. So any single time like anyone came to the table to negotiate, either a deal just didn't make sense or the other side capitulated and then Trump just wants more. Okay, there's so many examples of that, and I'm sure like all of you've seen it in different ways as well, which is a further reason why China most likely is going to stay strong, especially because there are actually many tools that remain in China's toolkit to actually fight back and put more pain on the U.S. to put more pressure as well. And then here we are today. Okay, so and I'll talk a little bit more about this suspending postal service. So China urges U.S. to stop whining. Anyways, I'm not gonna go over today's news. Just Google it. Like I'm sure there's a lot going on even as we speak. Okay, so and again, if anyone has any questions on all of this, please ask in chat, and I'll actually just naturally respond to some of the questions as I go through this. Now, so first I wanted to talk about some key concepts that's really important to understand. So tariffs are tariffs, okay? So tariffs are import taxes. Let's be clear on that. Trade deficits are completely different. And this is what really confused, like this board confused everyone when we were watching it. These numbers don't even make sense. These are not tariffs charged to the U.S. The fine print here is tariffs charged to the U.S., including currency manipulation and trade barriers. Anyways, people soon figured out that essentially this was a simplified view of trade deficits. And the reason why I say simplified as well is because these trade deficits are only based on products, not on services. So the U.S. actually has a surplus of services to other countries. So for example, like legal services, or even stuff like Amazon AWS. There is actually a surplus of services to other countries. But no, Trump didn't include that, because obviously he wanted this number to seem as high as possible, and it was focused on physical product exports. And I want to make sure everyone here understands, trade deficits are not inherently bad. Like just using Vietnam as an example, Vietnam has a 90% trade deficit. And at the time, Vietnam had a higher reciprocal tariff than China, which is ridiculous. I mean, like Vietnam has always been on the U.S. side. But why does Vietnam have a trade deficit? Okay, the average American income is $40,000. Okay, and a lot of Nikes are made in Vietnam. Like literally, if you spend all your income on Nike shoes, you can afford 400 pairs of Nike shoes per year. Okay, and some of you probably do that. I don't know. The average Vietnamese income is $8,000. And like, okay, so like Tesla Cybertrucks produced in the US. Like, it'll take the average Vietnamese 12.5 years to buy one single Cybertruck. Not worth it, by the way. Okay? And like this is why. This is why Vietnam, Bangladesh, China has a high trade deficit. Okay? The reason why like Nike makes their shoes in Vietnam, or like companies make their clothing or cheaper goods in Bangladesh or in China, is because the average American doesn't want to do that. Okay? Like, I don't know who here in this chat, whether you're American, European, Australian, like do you want your children to like be making shoes at a Nike factory? No. Okay? So it's like Americans, like Europeans, they don't want these jobs. Like, they don't want these manufacturing jobs. Okay? Now, but who do they really hurt? And this is where, like, honestly, like, and I think the audience here listening to this is going to realize this, like, way more than the American public. But the American public and what Trump and the U.S. government is really, like, pushing for is that, well, these tariffs are going to hurt China. That doesn't even make any sense. Like, tariffs are import taxes. So who gets hurt by them, right? Well, so first of all, what is the point? Tariffs are meant to protect local industries. Now, there are some fair usages of tariffs. So we talk about Europe, for example, right? And by the way, actually, pretty much all of our clients right now who might be more focused on the U.S. market, if they can, they're starting to diversify to non-U.S. markets, including Europe, including Australia, right? And just so you guys know, there's nothing too difficult about that. It's just because like the U.S. used to be like, it still is the biggest, easiest market, and there's no VAT concerns before these tariffs, and there was always de minimis, right? However, all of our clients, if they're not already, they're starting to advance into Europe, Australia, UK, for example. Now, there is this concern from European countries, European industries, that, okay, well, are these Chinese suppliers going to flood the market and outcompete local European industries? Okay, so if you talk about cars, all right, so Europe currently has very high tariffs on especially electric vehicles, and honestly, like electric vehicle tariffs on China. Frankly speaking, like I actually think that is a right use of these tariffs, because BYD, they just announced like an $8,000 EV. I mean, like, I that's great for a consumer, you know what I mean? But like, okay, like $8,000 EV versus anything that like, like a local European manufacturer is going to produce, like that does actually put the manufacturer at risk. So I think that is a fair play to say that there is a very important local industry you're trying to protect, and you're utilizing tariffs and trade protections to protect local manufacturing. Okay, so like, yes, Germany has a right to and should probably protect Mercedes. But like, if you think about Mercedes, right? It's like, well, actually, there are a couple of Germans here actually, but it's like working at a Mercedes factory is not a bad job. It's not a bad like manufacturing blue collar job. It's not bad at all, right? But I guarantee you that Mercedes auto worker is not gonna want to sew shoes. Well, I'm pretty sure. Or at the very least, sew shoes at minimum wage or maybe worse. Okay, because that's what it needs. Something like producing, a Mercedes C-Class, it takes quite a bit of labor, it has a lot of automation, but the value of that product is so high that it's actually worth the labor, and it's worth paying high labor rates and having, decent working environments. Now, if you're trying to like produce a pair of $50 shoes, like that, it's just not possible. Okay, so with these tariffs, like either you're just not going to get that product at all, which is, by the way, what's happening right now, or like this theoretical of bringing all consumer product manufacturing to local markets, and that $50 pairs of shoes is going to cost $400, right? Whatever the math actually works out. And the point here is, now, this is specific to our industry. So what I mean is our clients, the audience I'm talking to, which is specifically D2C e-com brands who ship or potentially might ship their consumer products from China to US and around the world. This is a specific niche that actually does not significantly compete with local markets. Okay. And also, by the way, all of the brands that are in attendance listening to this right now, assuming you're Western brands, who you're competing with? You're competing with Chinese sellers. You're competing with sometimes shady Chinese sellers. Actually, like half the clients listening to this right now. I mean, I was just talking to a client about how, like, just like random Chinese Amazon sellers were just crushing his business because they were bidding on his keywords and like just selling like, like cheap products under his brand because, well, they were still waiting for their trademark, right? But like that's who you're competing with. Okay. And honestly, like I even think that like there's a right way to do things, and a lot of Chinese sellers or Amazon sellers, they're not doing the right way. They are using shady tactics, and that deserves to suffer. But D2C brands who are based in the US or based in the EU and pay US or EU taxes, okay, they're the ones like profiting in this specific niche. And they deserve to profit, right? I mean, they're businesses, right? And they're bringing access to local consumers to products that otherwise they may not actually be able to access. And by the way, I mean, like there's actually plenty of examples of our EcommOps clients. They operate very, very good brands. And actually just throughout the years, even before this, I was like, look, you're crushing in the US. You have a great brand. Like, why don't you expand to the UK, to the EU? And I mean, it was always a good idea. But then usually it was like, well, look, I'm crushing in the US. I'm making money in the US. Like, I don't want to figure out like, the other countries. I'm just gonna just focus on what's working, right? But that also makes it so that specific brand and product that usually always has some kind of uniqueness to it and high quality is literally not accessible by the average European because that brand is not marketing to European countries. They're not even accessing, like, they're not even selling or shipping to European countries. Okay. So now, from a consumer standpoint, I actually do think that, well, first of all, cheap, good quality consumer products sold in the right way benefits the consumer as well, especially when there's no local alternative. And, like, this is why I'm saying that in the US, this whole tariff thing hurts consumers as well. But as these brands expand to other markets, the fear of these D2C brands somehow flooding flooding the markets with Chinese products and harming local industries and harming local consumers is just not true. Again, this is very specific to this segment of e-commerce that we're all in, selling consumer products to countries where typically there's no great alternative. Okay. And there, by the way, there's plenty of examples of this, of where, like, so this is an example of a local brand. And there's so many examples of this. Small businesses, just, they're getting crushed. If they're not getting crushed right now, they are getting crushed. They will be getting crushed. Or at the very least, the uncertainty of everything is crushing them. There was some data around, like, freight volume has gone down something like 40-50% or 60%, depending on the measure. Factory orders are getting canceled from China. Okay. So you're going to have two major problems. One is that, like, American consumers are literally going to experience a shortage of products. There was a stat earlier, like Walmart, for example. Walmart, like 80% of their products were either fully manufactured in China, or they have some significant portion of their supply chain from China. And actually, that's a very important point. It's not just about the final assembly. Even if something is assembled in Mexico or Canada, potentially like 90% of the raw materials are still from China. So these tariffs hurt that as well, right? Now, and like, so it's going to hurt consumers over the next couple of months if these tariffs still actually maintain. U.S. consumers are going to face shortages, potentially as bad or maybe even worse in certain ways as the COVID shortages. I mean, because this is a very similar supply chain shock. And what's going to happen is that more and more small and medium-sized businesses are going to be hurt and potentially have to shrink or close down. And that's just the reality of all of this. And this is honestly one of the reasons why I'm kind of pissed off by this whole thing. Like I try to be I've tried to avoid being political. Like I'm trying to be Chinese. I'm trying to be American as well. But this is pissing me off because I mean I was there. Like I was an entrepreneur myself. I still am an entrepreneur, and I work. We at EcommOps work with a lot of hardworking entrepreneurs, and you guys are the ones getting hurt. Okay, and that's just not right. That's just not right. Now, there's not much we can do about it. Okay, like unfortunately, no one here can really do that much or anything at all about changing Trump's mind. So the best that we can really do, and the best I can really do, and e-commerce can do, is to just get the information out there transparently, try to give you guys the details, and at least our point of view on, what you might want to do, to navigate around the situation. Moving forward, though, there's been a lot of questions about legality, by the way. So just very briefly is that technically the president is not supposed to just change tariffs like this. However, technically, if there is a national emergency, then he has the power to do so. And this is why, recently you keep hearing about the fentanyl emergency, the trade deficit emergency. That is very meaningful. Why is everything an emergency? Well, because in an emergency situation, the president has power to do this. However, more and more entrepreneurs are starting to sue. Actually, California, the state, is starting to take legal actions as well. And there is this idea that whether it's entrepreneurs, businesses, or the government, like there could and maybe should be legal action to prevent or roll back this. The problem with the legal process, especially in the U.S., is that so thank you, Kate. Kate actually in chat just sent this article. Yeah, so I'm actually not gonna go through all of this, but let me just link this here as well. Okay, so the idea is that this is not legal, but whether or not it's legal or not doesn't really matter, unless someone takes actions against it and the courts do something about it. The reality right now is that this is happening, and even if everything goes right in terms of legal proceedings, it's going to take time. So whatever actually happens, whether it's legal or not, this is the reality. So I really do believe that there are legal concerns here, but us as business operators, unfortunately, we don't really have we don't have the benefit of patience. Okay, we have to figure out what we do now when this is still an issue. Just one quick note that the U.S. dollar and the U.S. long-term treasuries market is something that you should all keep an eye on. For Americans out there, definitely this is something that you might want just in terms of your well-being, right? Because so what's usually happening is usually when stocks go down, actually U.S. treasuries go up, okay? Especially long-term U.S. treasuries. The price goes up and the 10-year yield actually goes down. So I'm not going to go through a whole primer on treasuries, but just remember, when someone says yields go down, it means the treasury prices go up. When someone says the yields go up, it means the price of the treasury, underlying treasury, actually goes down. Okay? So what normally happens in a market downturn is that pretty much everyone in the world starts to purchase or flee to safer assets, which U.S. treasuries was always considered one of the safest assets, especially the 10-year or longer term treasuries. What's been happening though is that the stock markets have been weak, have been going down, and treasuries have also been going down. Treasury yields have been going up, which means the underlying prices have been going down. That is not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the American economy, because what basically it means is that not only is money flowing out of U.S. equities, it's flowing out of just U.S. dollars, just trust in America. The euro is up. The Swiss franc is up. Gold is up. Okay. Now people have been asking me, well, the RMB doesn't seem to be up, but that's kind of on purpose as well, because for a country which like China that is really driven by imports, China actually wants its currency to be cheap. So it's cheaper to then purchase Chinese goods. As a matter of fact, actually, this goes back to the whole concept of the trade deficit as well, right? A trade deficit, again, is not a bad thing. It's a neutral thing. But the reason why the US dollar, well, part of the reason why the US dollar has been so strong is because of that trade deficit. Because, there is that misbalance in just general goods. But what's making up for it is that dollars. Other countries, other companies in other countries, they hold a lot of dollars or like dollar denominated assets, right? So even to get to this ridiculous idea of somehow balancing out this trade deficit, it quite literally means that the US dollar probably has to depreciate by a lot, right? And then the other thing is China also holds something like 750 $800 billion worth of US treasuries. So it's the number 2 holder of US treasuries. So it doesn't mean that China, if it sells all of that, is going to crash the dollar, because it's still not a significant amount. However, that is a weapon, because when there are significant spikes in that movement, then what that happens is that starts to create a potential waterfall effect. And right now, it's not only China, even Japan. Japan has been one of the largest sellers of US debt recently. But not because of using it as a weapon, it's because, well, it's just just generally speaking, Japanese companies are losing trust in the US dollar. Okay? Now, the reason why I say this is because right now, I personally believe that the best hope for us to come to a reasonable conclusion, which means hopefully Trump backing down on these tariffs, backing down on this trade war, de minimis elimination, is to have enough pressure from, well, someone, or hopefully everyone. And if the government's not enough, if its allies aren't enough, if the stock market's not enough, well, hopefully the combination of the stock market and the dollar dropping and US treasuries dropping, hopefully that is enough. And the reason why that is really, really important is because the combination, so probably everyone has here is knows about inflation. You probably hear about it all the time, right? We don't like inflation. Actually, inflation is not necessarily a bad thing. Having controlled inflation is actually generally considered a positive thing. Inflation of roughly 2 to 3% or so, and that's usually the US target. Because just inflation just happens, right? People make more money and you spend more money, and actually there is a general natural motivation, or just countries want people to be motivated to spend money now versus just save it forever. Okay, so that's why inflation is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about stagflation. So let me just risk of stagflation. So I'm not going to go through a economics course right now, but look it up. Stagflation is very, very risky, because usually what happens with inflation is that inflation usually comes with economic growth. Okay. The markets are running wild, and which is technically a good thing, right? But that also causes inflation as well. Everyone's making more money, putting more money in the system. That's kind of what happened during COVID, at least in the U.S. markets. What stagflation is, though, is when the economy is not doing well, but prices go up. That usually doesn't happen. And well, usually that is because of supply chain shocks, artificial supply chain shocks. For example, tariffs. Okay. The problem with stagflation is that there is very little that the U.S. Federal Reserve or any kind of central bank can actually do in order to address it. Because traditionally, and this is what happened during and after COVID, by the way, is the U.S. Federal Reserve, because there was inflation, it was able to actually, so to combat inflation, you usually want to raise rates. Okay, and again, I'm not gonna go through the core concepts here, but usually want to raise rates. Trump has been pushing the U.S. Federal Reserve to decrease rates, because when you decrease rates, usually that boosts up the stock market, right? But when you have stagflation, right, when you have a combination of a weak economy, not a growing economy, but also just just increasing inflation, if you start to actually like try to decrease rates to boost the stock market, what can really happen is hyperinflation, which means an aggressive devaluing of the currency itself. So again, I'm not going to go into too many details of the economics principles. If you want to know more, let me know. Maybe I'll do something separate on that. But just know that this is a big concern. But I see it as a silver lining. Not that like this is going to happen. I see this as potentially one of the key pressure points that Trump may actually have to act, or at least someone in the government is going to do something to make Trump act and start to back down on some of these aggressive trade policies. Okay, so before we talk about some more details of the logistical considerations, one very important concept of anyone here who's using any kind of freight, and especially considering DTC shipping, is the importance of who the importer is, or the importer record, the IOR, okay? So just using some very simple examples. Traditional bulk freight, let's just say like H&M, right? They use freight on, just traditional freight. And let's just say they produce a product for $3, okay? And let's just say the duty rate is 30%. So through the traditional process, they go through U.S. Customs, they pay 30% on $3, like 90 cents plus some fees. And then that goes to their U.S. warehouse. And then they sell it for $30. And then they ship it to customers duty free, but they pay some sales taxes. But that's after the fact, okay? But basically, total import duty paid is something like 90 cents plus, some fees. Whereas the direct model, so something like DHL Express, okay? So they sell for, let's just say Shein or whoever sells for $30. And you're using this fully direct model. So again, this is not like Union Express or private couriers. This is something like DHL Express, okay? In this case, the importer is the U.S. customer or the end customer. And this is exactly why, if you actually purchase something where someone sends you something via DHL Express, especially if you're in the EU and there's actually a lot more stringent VAT and kind of import rules, is that technically the importer is the recipient and therefore the customer. So technically, and not everyone does this by the way, but technically you're supposed to declare the retail value. So you're supposed to declare 30% on $30 and that's $9. Okay, so in the first round of de minimis elimination, this was the concern, that if de minimis was eliminated, then you would have to declare, because the recipient is the customer, right? Then you have to declare, on the retail value, okay? And then this is what Union Express and similar or other private couriers currently do for the next week or so at least. They utilize something called T86 or something similar, okay? So in this example, and actually most of our clients use this model. You sell it for $30, okay? And it goes through customs, but it doesn't matter because it's under $800. We have to declare the right HTS code and everything like that, but then the value doesn't matter, and then it just ships to the customer duty free, okay? Yeah, so I do have a question here about the shipping lines to be paused after April 25th. I will get to that, Peter. I'll get to that next. But wrapping this up, actually, you know what? That question does have to do with this because right now this is the method that's currently working. Okay, actually, this method, just oddly enough, this is the only method that skips all tariffs. Right now, until when these parcels hit customs on May 2nd, it is still 100% duty free as long as you're declaring the HTS code correctly, right? And then there's a question in chat is, by the way, I did mention that shipping lines will be paused between April 25th and May 6th. Is that for everyone who's not an EcommOps client? So April 25th is when these couriers, just roughly, it might be 24th, 26th or so, but right now we're estimating April 25th, is when these couriers are going to pause this specific service. And why is that? Is because this service using T86 declaration is not going to clear customs at all on May 2nd if de minimis is eliminated, because this specific entry only is valid assuming the de minimis exemption. And that is why, starting on and around April 25th, we expect these methods to stop running. Now, and to answer your question, Peter, it's for everyone. Okay, so like it's for everyone who is utilizing a private courier model, something like UniExpress, Yanwan, 4PX, whatever. Okay. Now, after the 25th, UniExpress currently has a DDP solution. And by the way, like I'm going to explain some of these terms next. Or actually, you know what? I'll probably I'll probably just explain these concepts first, right? So we have freight shipping by boat, full containers, formal clearing. Typically, is going to be the cheapest per unit. But then like we're talking about full containers on ocean shipping. But who knows, it's gonna be cheaper because I don't know if it's gonna be cheaper if you have 200% like tariffs, whatever, right? But usually there's gonna be like kind of just slower customs clearance in general. DDP is all the rage right now, delivery duty paid. So this means that like, and you know, let's talk about freight first, right? That means your like logistic partner, it just pre-collects, prepays all the duties and taxes, and to you, the actual brand shipping it, it's all just included, right? Generally, it's more expensive than full container loads, but generally cheaper than LCLs. Like especially considering tariffs, but the different tariffs makes this a very messy calculation. This has been talked about a lot. International postal. So this is actually what a lot of folks are talking about, where international postal services, they're declaring like a very high fee of. So this is what this part means. Okay, so for international postal services, this is what they're saying is postal items, right? 120% or like $150. Sorry, $100. Okay, I'm just basically too expensive per package. But I want to clarify that this is specifically talking about e-packet or international postal. Okay. Um, and now like we've already paused services here already. So this was a service that was very commonly used because it is usually the most cost efficient method for shipping to Hawaii and Alaska and U.S. territories. So since like 2 days ago, we completely paused those services, replaced it with a slightly more expensive direct line, but at least it's not going to be governed by this process. Okay, and then we have private parcel lines, and this is what we're talking about here. Using something like T86. And this is something that is still tariff-free until May 2nd and sending out of China roughly on April 25th. Okay, and then the DDP private parcel line. So this is what we're talking about here, and I'll talk about some of the details afterwards as well. But this is a line that essentially what they do is that they clear customs in bulk and then they directly inject into the last mile after the fact. Okay, and they're gonna do something in the middle to make a DDP, but essentially there is no like legal, like the importer is not going to be like you or the seller. It's something that we're still trying to confirm 100%. But what we understand it as is that the importer is going to be kind of something on their side. Okay, and this is why this is something that kind of avoids a situation where you're supposed to declare the full retail value. All right. And so I've had a lot of questions about like, should I just send my products to the US? Yes, maybe. But here, I do want to get through like HTS codes, and like if we have time, I'll do some like quick simple math on like some considerations on this question. All right. But okay, HTS codes. I have a lot of questions about this. What is an HTS code? So just simply put, it's just a code that's associated with your product, and particularly with U.S. imports, and it matters around the world as well. But basically, it is how it classifies your product, and what rate of duties is it supposed to be charged, and also if there's any specific kind of details about that product. Okay. Now this is more complicated than it might seem. So first, and I have this linked. Okay. So first you have to go to this tool. Let me zoom out a little bit. And I'll just kind of use it. So we actually have examples of these codes. Okay. So let me just use this one. Women's trousers. You put in the code here. Okay. So this can be a little bit confusing because this is the heading or subheading. So these 8 digits are the most relevant for the duty rate. Whereas the last two digits, which by the way, if you don't have the last two digits, like it might just be 00 because it doesn't have these details, right? These are just more like details in the product itself, but you see like there's no different duty rates. Okay, these are just women's, girls, shorts, whatever. But these all fall under this heading and subheading for the duty rate itself. And now, what do you see here? Okay, 28.6%. So this is what I meant by that fact sheet wasn't even complete. Here, what was that one? So this fact sheet doesn't even include that number, which is ridiculous. But it's all those tariffs plus this. But basically, you have this 28.6%, okay, which is this 28.6%. All right, and then Section 305. So Section 305 gets a little bit more complicated, but you either know that your product is on it, or you use the second tool, which I have here, and you put in that same subheading. And this says that due to Section 305, you add an additional 7.5% duties. So that is this number here, okay? And then plus 10%, plus 10% again, plus 125%. So for women's woven trousers, 181.1%. Okay? Now, I'm not gonna like try to look for like the highest duty possible, but back to this point, right? It is very, very possible that you can actually end up with higher than 245% tariffs. If you have 125% plus 20%, plus it just happens that your product is on the Section 301 for 100%, plus maybe some other general duties, it could actually be higher than that, right? So just keep that in mind. Now, that's not going to be consumer products, so you don't have to worry about that. That's going to be stuff like the EVs and stuff like that. And then I often get a question about what these columns mean. Just don't worry about these for yourself, because these are like special rates for like Australia and stuff like that. So this doesn't really matter for China. And then column 2 is essentially like higher general duty rates for specific restricted countries. So we're talking about like Cuba, North Korea, Russia, and Belarus. Okay, so well, don't import to these 4 countries, but yeah, that's what column 2 is, and this is why like understanding this is so incredibly important. Okay, and then let me just go through. Okay, so I was going to like have detailed updates here, but this is going to be outdated by the time we finish this anyway. So I have been on Twitter. This is again like where I am going to, on a daily basis, assuming there's changes, I'm going to be sharing the most updated information. And I'm always going to have a section around the details of the core year pricing. So specifically for this, right now, or here, let me see. Starting after April 25th, we expect Unit Express and similar to pause operations of all standard shipping lines. Okay, so we at EcommOps at least suggest all clients to pause U.S. orders from China between April 25th to the 6th. And then what throws a wrench a little bit in this is that there is going to be a Chinese holiday between May 1st to the 5th. I assume Trump like probably planned this. So nothing's going to move around this time anyways. But around May 2nd, we will have further indication of what's going to happen with de minimis. Is it going to be paused or canceled? Look, and I have a section here. Do I think it'll be paused again? Maybe, maybe not. I actually do have a pretty good idea that I think it'll be paused in some way, but no one knows. Okay, like no one possibly knows. No one knows how Trump is thinking right now. Okay, and like, look, we don't want you to pause. Like this is business for us, right? We don't want U.S. orders to pause for 10 days. So I have bias otherwise, but I do not feel confident telling you guys that I think that de minimis is going to be paused. So just keep selling and just like, figure out after the fact. And the main reason is because of this date, because it takes time for parcels to go from China to clear customs. And after April 25th, the traditional lines are not going to make it. or at least like, their couriers aren't going to be confident that this line is going to make it past customs. And by the way, it's midnight of May 2nd. Okay, so technically it's like the evening of May 1st. So that's why we suggest pausing. Now, I do want to emphasize that UnExpress does have a DDP solution. Okay, and the DB solution is, so here. The pricing for the DDP solution is a little bit complicated because it's kind of like a combination of weight and weight ranges. So right now, and like literally this is as of April 17th, and I do expect this will change or may change. $1.20 more per order for like anything up to 500 gram, $2 more per order for an example of a package for 1 kilogram, $5 more per order, like more by the way, for anything that's 2 kilogram. So these are the examples, and unfortunately the full detailed quote rate has not been out yet, and quite honestly, like everyone is still figuring out, and just given the uncertainty around the tariffs, generally speaking, just like DDP, there's all over the place, is trying to figure out these rates. So I don't expect that we're gonna have these prices to be exact until like probably closer to the date. So EcommOps' stance is, by the way, like we trust UnExpress a lot. We trust them as a courier. And by the way, Yang is also a good courier. Well, they're actually working on a solution as well. But we trust the courier, and this DDP line is already working. The problem is, though, it's not really tested at high scale. Just the theoretical concept of it is very clear. Like it just works, right? You clear customs and then you direct incheck into the USPS. It just works. So there's nothing against that. But we don't have high confidence that that this is something that is going to work at scale. Because what happens when like 1 million packages start using this line? Is it going to be as efficient? Is there going to be some questions around the DTP process when all of a sudden it spikes up? We don't know. Okay, so if you want to use this line, whether it's EcommOps or you're working with some other 3PL, like I don't think it would be a bad idea. Okay, but just want to give out the nuance that this is not something that we feel 100% confident in, but more because we tend to be just relatively conservative, and we really only traditionally recommend lines or offer lines that we have already utilized at scale. Okay, now so again, this document here is not going to be live updated. Just or check the pinned post on top. Okay, so here's a question here. So hi Dayu, for UnExpress DDP, is there any risk to us, the seller, or to the customer, if UnExpress underdeclares the value of the goods to customs? Okay, so basically, the question is, what is the risk, if any, to, like, again, we're talking about this method here. What is the risk, if any, to either the customer or to the seller utilizing this DDP method? So, and just a quick note is that I'm not yet 100% certain on this yet, but I feel pretty confident enough to say that as long as this is the DDP solution that we do actually expect, the nature of DDP is that whatever they're doing here is on them, whether it's UnExpress or they're using some third-party importer, okay? Because there is a fair point that, okay, so DDP is somewhat of a gray area, like not just now, but just always. There's always a lot of kind of just uncertain stuff about how DDP logistics actually works, okay? And honestly, if you ask your freight forwarder exactly how it works, they're not going to tell you. Or you should probably not trust exactly what they tell you, right? However, the point is that the risk is on them. Like, there's no legal risk on you, okay? Because, and again, I will update this if we confirm otherwise. But as far as we understand, the importer is not the customer, the importer is not the actual brand, but the importer is somewhere here, whatever they do here, okay? Now, there is a risk of not legal risk, but what happens if you have a batch of orders stuck at customs? Okay, sure, you don't have the legal risk, but then, well, Unexpress or your DTP carrier might be, well, look, it's stuck. What can we do? So either it's going to get stuck, delayed, or possibly you need some additional fee to clear customs. Okay, so even though you're not at legal risk, technically speaking, there is that risk of potential disruption on your actual logistics. And that's exactly why we're uncertain, or we're not confident that this is going to be the right solution at scale. But it might be. And we'll essentially know after May 6th. Either it doesn't matter anymore because de minimis is paused again, or millions of parcels have passed and it's totally fine. Okay, so we definitely will know May 6th. And then there was a question about if I would use it at small scale, what is the worst case scenario? That would be the worst case scenario, I think. That if you use this even at small scale. Okay, so I maybe there's some clarification on what I meant by scale. Right now, it's working at small scale. But the reason why it's small scale is because no one needs to use it. Like, no one needs to pay more for no reason because de minimis is still exempt. So right now, it's like working at very small scale. But the question is, like, will it scale up the same way at large scale, right? All right, so there's another question. Will DTC brands see tariffs like the example that you showed, or is that more for brands who ship freight from China to the U.S.? So in this model, you're definitely going to have to pay tariffs. Depending on the other solutions, either there's like a DDP option, and there's actually other like kind of like pseudo DDP options where it's not formally DDP in terms of the collection, but it clear customs and you pay some fee and maybe some percentage of the tariff rate depending on your HDS code. There's a question on. Okay, so there's a couple of related questions. So that decision for DDP or stop shipping needs to be done by April 25th, assuming all things stays equal. Also regarding battery products and DDP. And a related question is, can we use DDP temporarily and switch back to regular line after May 6th? So I'll answer the first question first. So yes, the decision to either use a DDP solution or to stop, that has to happen like around April 25th or maybe April 24th, depending on your time zone. So if you work with EcommOps, I mean, definitely talk to your EcommOps account team and like just plan it specifically, and definitely plan it with your China 3PL if you're working with someone else. And then the second question is, can we use DDP temporarily and then switch back to the regular line after May 6th? So potentially, but if de minimis is actually eliminated, then there's no regular line to switch to because this is not going to work anymore. Like, this only works with the de minimis exemption, not if it's eliminated. Okay. And by the way, this is part of the reason why I even kind of strongly suggest to utilize, to just pause temporarily. All right. It depends on how you can manage your customer base. Right? Like, can you scale down your ad spend for like at least 5-6 days, right? Because if you think about it, like April 25th, right? Or let's say starting 24th, that's roughly 6 days or so, or 7 days until May 1st. There is a real possibility that come May 1st, that de minimis is actually paused. Now, given Trump's history, I don't think we'll know before that. That's the problem. I don't think there's very high chance that even if there's going to be a pause, he's going to let us know on April 25th. So there is a scenario where if you, in the time being, ship a bunch of orders using the DDP method, that's more expensive and maybe some risk, but then come like May 1st, de minimis is eliminated anyways, and then everything after May 6th, like we already know that. I mean, so if May 1st comes and de minimis elimination is paused, okay, then the private standard lines will work again. T86 will work again. So then you can start shipping on May 6th. Or if not, that's still possible. and that you actually have to use the DTP solution on May 6th. However, that will probably give us enough time for us to have much more confidence if the DTP solution is actually working at scale. Okay. Whereas the risk in the middle is that you might have like a week's worth of orders potentially stuck in customs for whatever reason. All right. So is the DTP per order pricing on top of the tariffs? So for example, on top of the 158% tariffs for women's woven pants? No, that's the point of DTP. Okay. So the point of DTP is there's going to be like, some higher fees on a per order basis than the ordinary line, but this is intended so that this does not add any additional tariffs. Now, there are other potential shipping lines that have some combination. Okay, but yeah, I mean, there's also potential solutions, but honestly, I feel less confident about those kind of solutions right now. Just to confirm, DTP option is only for U.S. shipment, and the rest of the world is still staying with the old method. Yes, the rest of the world. Actually, I mean, so nothing is happening with the rest of the world. Like, actually, like that's actually one of my main suggestions. Look, I mean, the best way to like de-risk from this is just like expand to the rest of the world if you're not already. There is literally nothing wrong with like any of the shipping lines for the rest of the world. Okay. As a matter of fact, especially if you're thinking about like more the medium term, I think the rest of the world is going to be ever more attractive because more and more of just industries and like non-U.S. customers. I mean, they're like there's literally boycotts against like U.S. products, right? And there's increasing closeness with China, which is something honestly I never really expected. But there's actually going to be closer trade relations between the rest of the world and China. So at least in the medium and long term, I do actually think that expanding to non-U.S. markets, if you can, is probably the right long-term approach. And then there's some questions about battery products, liquid products, and creams. Unfortunately, the DTP option right now only is supposed to support ordinary products. So right now, at least, no indication that it can support battery products, no indication that it can support liquid or cosmetics. Now, from our experience, we have more confidence that there's going to be a DTP solution for battery products because batteries are cleared in customs in a pretty similar way as normal products. Okay, so I have more confidence that there's going to be a battery line solution. I am frankly less confident on a liquid cosmetic solution simply because there was always more scrutiny on customs clearing for those products. So right now, I don't have any confidence that we have a DTP solution, at least in the near term, for liquid and cosmetic products or creams. Will EcommOps fulfill orders during the holidays from May 1st to May 5th? This is something that like every year, every single holidays, I kind of like we get a similar question when the same thing happens in Chinese New Year's. There's always like some China 3PLs that claim that they fulfill through the holidays. No, like the way that these holidays work is that nothing moves. Like literally, I mean, so if you have a China 3PL like claiming that they fulfill between May 1st and May 4th, whatever, May 5th, they might be giving you tracking numbers. Like if you consider that to be fulfillment, I guess, but no one's picking them up. Like there's like trucking companies like aren't running, logistics companies aren't running. Or what Union Express usually does is they have like they have a skeleton crew. Like they might get those parcels like to their warehouse and it just stays there. Okay, because like the rest of the supply chain is literally off. So no, EcommOps is not going to fulfill orders during the holidays from May 1st to May 5th. And anyone who says that they do that or through Chinese New Year's like is just like giving you tracking numbers and not actually doing anything. So excuse me. So question from Peter is, back in February, when Chinese couriers started to charge us extra dollars per order, that time did they use DTP? So that was like the first, those couple days when de minimis was eliminated during that same period. No, they were using something a little bit different. They were utilizing something called T11 customs processing. Okay, so T11 customs processing is like it has a minimum fee of $2 like 60 cents whatever, plus like some duty rate, and that was actually the solution that was kind of the emergency solution that these couriers were using. The problem with T11 when it goes straight to your customers, which was like at that time like what it was doing, is that technically falls under this model, because T11, like there was like the importer is supposed to be like, I mean, just it's supposed to go straight to your recipient, right? So this is where declare value becomes a very big problem, where you're technically not supposed to declare, like you're supposed to declare this concept of retail value, right? And whatever that is, like even if your product is like $1 factory COGS, you're gonna get questioned if you use T11. You declare like that part to be $1. Okay, now to be completely transparent, we do believe that the DDP solution is utilizing some form of like T11 or something similar. Okay, however, the main thing is that, and like again, like I will update if this changes, is that they organize the import process here on their own, which means that they can say, and by the way, this is why like if you work with EcommOps, or even if you don't, start preparing your HDS codes, start preparing like some proof of your factory invoices, like some proof of your factory COGS. Okay, is that like they can utilize that, and they kind of do their own thing, and they might use T11 and they might do whatever, and they first import into themselves, and then they like clear the customs, and then they actually pass it on to the post. Okay, so that is a difference. All right, so oh yeah, so what DDP work for electronic goods? No batteries. Actually, well, so this is where ask your EcommOps team as your 3PL, because like electronic goods with no batteries, it really depends, because even if electronic good doesn't have a battery, it might be considered a battery product depending on like the actual components and the chipset. So this is going to be just more of a question that you have to ask your 3PL or EcommOps team. All right, so Vladimir has a question. We operate a DTC cosmetic brand, so my question is related to cosmetic products. The new DDP line is not accepting cosmetics. Could you please advise how we can continue to ship cosmetics to the U.S.? If there is no DDP solution for cosmetics, and de minimis is eliminated, so the cosmetics lines don't come back, probably the only option you're going to have is just freight. I mean, that's really it. It doesn't have to be sea freight, but it could be like air freight, and local 3PLs. That's probably the only option that you're going to have. And actually, as a reminder, like I do actually run this beauty brand, and that's exactly what we did. Passionate Beauty actually got out of shipment by Air DDP to our U.S. 3PL partner, and so at least Pasnida's strategy is we're going to fulfill through U.S. fulfillment for that 10 days or however long we get more certainty our cosmetics products. Oh yeah, so Peter's question is, so with DDP, nobody is going to pay 200% tariff and the $200 minimum. Yeah, so yes. So with the DDP model, technically speaking, there should be no additional tariffs. There should no additional de minimis fees as well. All right, Mercedes, any notes on shipping supplements to the U.S.? Okay, so supplements is tricky. So EcommOps has never offered lines that ship supplements. It's because you're just like you're not. It's very tricky, because the vast majority of supplements are they fall under a lot of scrutiny, like FDA scrutiny, for example. And the traditional UniExpress private lines, they do not support supplements. And now there's a lot of ways to ship everything. I mean, again, like people were shipping fentanyl right? So similar to people shipping fentanyl into the U.S. through these lines, like they would just declare it as, I don't know, like socks. I don't know, right? And because of de minimis exceptions, like there was not enough scrutiny on that, and then that would clear. So I would just say that if you are actually selling supplements, and you're shipping direct parcels from China, be very careful, because that's exactly the kind of line that is going to just just not work or get stuck once there is additional customs scrutiny. And by the way, like, this is something that even if de minimis is not eliminated yet for like tariff purposes, there is increasing scrutiny in the process. Okay, which means that if you're doing anything less than legitimate, potentially like shipping supplements, or something that you're not supposed to do on a shipping line, look, the reality is that like no one checks every single parcel. Okay, and especially if you're doing something that is at relatively low scale, like supplements or whatever it might be. Okay, you ship 5 orders, it clears, and that might give you a false confidence that, oh, I can ship supplements through these lines. But what happens if you scale up to 100 orders per day, to 500 orders per day? That's where you're gonna really face a high risk of issues. And everyone here, like, look, I mean, like, why would you want to start a business selling 5 orders a day? Like, you're gonna want to scale up to 100 orders per day. So yeah, so like, just be very careful with anything that doesn't use legitimate custom clearing, like supplements, for example. All right, so when it comes to HTS codes, are invoices the only proof you need for your COGS? Yeah, I mean, look, Anatoly, just like this is where like just provide us with what you have, provide with your like freight forwarder, your 3PL, like with like what you have, right? And it has to be legitimate, right? But just it depends on what you have. It could be a bill of sale, it could be an invoice as well. And by the way, this is something that like you might actually want to work with your factory on. What is the right declaration, right? And so what I mean by that is like, okay, don't do anything illegitimate. Okay, don't blatantly underdeclare, because that's gonna get you in trouble, right? But if you really kind of like especially if you're working with a factory directly, right? There are certain things that like you can work together, kind of figure out what is the right declared value going to be, right? Because look, I mean, the factory makes margin as well. There's going to be transportation costs, right? If you're working with a sourcing agent, for example, they're going to have some fee as well, right? So what you pay exactly is not actually necessarily the declarable COGS. Okay, so this is something that like work with your factories, directly. Sorry, work with your factories and EcommOps directly to find the right reference materials. So a question from Etienne, can we instruct our rep to only fulfill orders to the rest of the world and queue all U.S. orders until further notice? Oh, yes, please. Okay, so again, I do emphasize, none of this affects anything for the rest of the world. So like just continue to ship the rest of the world as normal. The only thing this affects is U.S. shipping now. So when I say that EcommOps is going to pause like U.S. shipping, unless you tell us to, that's literally what we mean. So actually, we're not going to pause your European, Australian orders anyways, because yeah, like we wouldn't have to. So yes, you can definitely and you should continue to ship and push for the rest of the world and maintain your and potentially pause or change your strategy for U.S. orders. All right, do I suggest moving from China to other countries like Vietnam to source for products as a long-term solution? Doesn't seem like the U.S. and China relations will be good again anytime soon. Well, you know what? I actually thought that would be I thought that would be the move until this happened. Until like this shocker 46% reciprocal tariff on Vietnam at that time. And now this is paused. But like pause, what does that mean, right? So at the time, like these reciprocal tariffs on Vietnam were even higher than China. Now, what happened with the negotiations for Vietnam was, first of all, everyone was shocked by this calculation, because Vietnam was one of these countries that actually thought that they were very safe. Because like Vietnam did have some tariffs on the US, but like on average, the Vietnamese tariffs on US imports was something like 1%. So like Vietnam was like, oh, okay, well, look, we'll just reduce our tariff from 1% to like 0% on average. Is that going to just reduce this? I mean, that sounded ridiculous if you think about it, right? And it was ridiculous, but no. So Vietnam was willing to actually reduce its tariff to zero. And like, there's not much else he can do like other than that. And the U.S. said no, because we want you to balance out this trade deficit. Now these tariffs are paused, except by the way, this 10%, so it's still higher than before. And again, because of this, there's no possible way Vietnam, like in the near term, can zero out their trade deficit. And on top of that is uncertainty. No one actually knows what's going to happen in 90 days. I mean, no one's going to happen in like next week, to be honest, right? So you start to move your production from China to another country like Vietnam. Now, it depends on how easy it is, right? If you just happen to have the exact same factory in Vietnam producing the exact same product at similar costs, and all you have to do is literally, hey, I'm going to work at the Vietnamese factory now, like maybe that's easier, right? But then you have a problem of inefficient logistics. Like, so if you're producing in Vietnam, I mean, like Nike produces in Vietnam is because they ship entire containers. Vietnam does not have efficient DTC parcel options right now. Not to the US and especially not to around the world. So you can produce in Vietnam and it might be a wise, like, well, I mean, a lot of companies produce in Vietnam already, obviously, right? But I just don't think that's going to be a near-term solution for DTC shipping for the US or around the world. All right, so we have 2 minutes. I definitely need to hop off in 2 minutes, but let's see, what is... Okay, so I'm going to answer one last question. It's a good one. What do you think Trump's actual thought process is with what he's doing? If his math is so wrong, I'm just so confused at his overall goal. Everyone is. Okay, I mean, everyone still is. Look, he's using this as a negotiation tactic. Honestly, not very effectively, right? And part of it is because, like, okay, so Trump comes from a real estate background. And in real estate, like, there is a significant amount of negotiations is quite literally like you have counterparties. So technically someone wins, someone loses, right? Someone makes more money, someone makes less money. A contractor, waives some fee, right? And that's what he knows. And, he's probably decently good at it, I guess. I mean, he's really good at, like, screwing other contractors. But, like, that kind of negotiations where there's one counterparty and there's always a winner or a loser doesn't actually work on the global stage. When you have all these interrelated countries, and there doesn't need to be a winner or a loser. So, I mean, so that's my personal opinion, okay? I don't know how he thinks, but I think he's taking a wrong approach to these negotiations, and we see it as well. We see it with, I mean, even this process with China, right? Like, he sees it as like, hey, you have to come to the table and there just has to be like, negotiations and like, there's got to be some winner, some loser, right? And by the way, like, and maybe this is like wishful thinking actually. And don't take this as my formal point of view, but like, I really think that there's like somehow the non-zero chance, like some small chance that actually like tariffs even get lower than before. Okay, I mean, just hear me out for a second, right? Because there's always been like layers of tariffs on Chinese produced goods, and there's always been kind of like tariffs across the world on each countries, right? I mean, just kind of using this as an example. Even before the 125 and the 10%, there were always these tariffs. Okay, so even before all of this, woven trousers had like 35% plus tariffs. I actually think that there's this like some weird possible reality where like they come to a negotiating table and like they actually start zeroing out some of these tariffs, and actually they like the outcome might actually be even lower tariffs, and there's actually more free trade globally, and then the stock markets go up, the economy rages, and then Trump can claim he won, and really everyone wins, and everyone just makes more money. So That is not my point of view. I think there's a kind of a funny scenario where that could actually happen, and I'll just end it with that for now. So, anyways, anyone who hasn't seen this, I will send this recording, or actually just anyone here, anyone who signed up for this, I will send this recording, where my team will send this recording over the next day or so to your emails, ecom clients as well. We will share this document as well. Again, I do emphasize this is not a live document. We're going to lock this in like soon after this. We are going to have a webinar next week as well, next Thursday. So join that as well if you can. It's mostly for different time zones, but just given how much things change over a week, there's probably going to be more information there. So at the very least, register for it so we can share with you the recording after the fact. All right, so thank you everyone. Thank you guys, EcommOps clients, EcommOps community. Look, this is a tough situation for everyone. This is an uncertain situation for everyone. We're on your side. We're all in this together. Let's figure it out. The key to remember right now is everything is uncertain. Okay. And certainty is impossible right now. So the best we can probably do is just keep track of the information, like understand the implications, and just use that to make pretty tough decisions as much as we can. And I will do my best. I promise to update you. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll do my best to keep you in the loop along the way. All right. Thank you guys again. This is Dayu from EcommOps. Thank you. See you guys next time.